Hey folks, this is Steve from Demand Side Analytics, and the purpose of this video is to demonstrate how to use our topxofy CBL program, specifically for data structured in a wide format. If you happen to have data that is structured in a long format, then just check out the help file. The syntax is a little bit different, but by and large, the mechanics of the program are otherwise identical. So to illustrate how this program works, I'm going to set up a training data set, 365 days with hourly records. In this case, my load variable will just be NW1 through NW24. It's normally distributed with a mean of 25 and a standard deviation of 5. So potentially a bit unrealistic, but I think it's all right for this exercise. And also going to create some event indicator variables and some other indicator variables. But event day, I just made up a couple of fake event days. Event begin and event end. This would track when the event begins and when it ends on these event days. There's a holiday indicator variable. In this case, I'm not marking all federal holidays, but just grabbed a couple of them that occur in the summer. And then also I've created an eligible indicator variable. Here I'm only marking holidays as ineligible days, but this could also be used to mark like planned shutdown days as ineligible days. You would not need to mark out weekends. Those are dropped by default. All right, so before I run the program, it might be helpful to take a peek at the help file itself. So a couple of required components. First, the variable list. I think for wide structures, it might be a bit counterintuitive, but what you want to do is just put one of these in there. So I could use NW1 or NW7 or NW8, just one of your variable names. And then X and Y, that's like your top X of Y. So this might be 3 of 4 or 7 of 10 or 10 of 10, just as long as X is not greater than Y. Date is your date variable name. Interval for wide data structures is just, I guess, the granularity of your data. So if it's hourly, you could put hour. For anything else, you could put interval. Really, I think anything here works fine. And then for event, this is your event day indicator variable. So for wide data structures, you want to use your event day. For long, you would use event interval indicator variable, which you might not have in a wide variable format. A couple of options to be aware of. Keep weekends. If you want weekends to be eligible baseline days, you would want to use this option. Otherwise, they are dropped by default. Ineligible, if you have an indicator variable marking holidays or planned shutdown days, you could use this ineligible option to tag those. Weekday specific, if you want the CBL for a Monday to be calculated only based on previous Mondays, use this option. A number of these options here deal with adjustments. So additive and multiplicative adjustments are both fair game. You can apply a cap to either type. And then these pre-adjustment intervals, post-adjustment intervals, and the pre and post buffer. I think explaining those will be easier if I have some actual data. So here are my actual event days, and I believe my event hours were 13 to 18. Yeah, so there's one of my events. If you want to have an additive or multiplicative adjustment, you would just need to tell Stata which intervals to use and how much of a buffer you want. So for example, if you wanted an additive adjustment based on some pre-event demand, maybe you want this to be your buffer period, so a buffer window of 2 intervals and an adjustment window of 3 intervals. So it's up to you if you want to use this or not, but just how many intervals do you want the adjustment window to be, how much of a buffer between the adjustment window and the event window, and then there's the same thing on the backside. So you can have an adjustment based on post-event data. And then look-back limit. This is if you want to restrict the look-back window to a certain number of days. And then for wide data formats, you will need to use these 3 options. These would not be optional at this point. So data format, if it's wide, just put in wide. And then begin and end, these are your event beginning and event ending variables. So if I go back to my browser, yeah, so this just tells Stata when the event began and when it ends. All right, so getting back to the code. So what I have here is I'm creating a 3 of 5 CBL. Again, remember you can put any of the demand variables here. If I put megawatt 7, I would get the same exact result. That's my date variable. I have hourly data. With events, you want to tag your event day indicator variable. Ineligible, don't have to use this. In this case, I am. I'm going to have a multiplicative adjustment. The pre-adjustment window will be 2 intervals long. There'll be a 1 hour buffer between the adjustment window and the event window. I have a wide data format, and I'm marking my beginning and ending event variables. So I can run that, and this will return the unadjusted CBL. So this does not have the multiplicative adjustment in there, but for hours 1 through 24 on these event days. The unadjusted CBL, also there's the adjusted CBL in there, again for hours 1 through 24. So that one does factor in the multiplicative adjustment or the additive adjustment if that's the one you wanted. It also stores what the adjustment factor was. So again, you can put a cap on these guys if you want to. In this case, I didn't. Yeah, and I think that pretty much sums it up. If you have questions or suggestions, please feel free to reach out. Otherwise, I hope this program serves you well.